Raven Geary, and welcome to this special edition of Vibrations. Today we are coming to you from the Tallahassee-Leon County Civic Center to pay homage to the mother of the Civil Rights Movement, Mrs. Rosa Parks. Mrs. Parks is scheduled to receive an honorary degree today from Florida State University. In 1955, it was Mrs. Parks who refused to give up her seat to a white male passenger on a bus in Montgomery, Alabama. Today we are honoring her strong, quiet, courageous act. Let's go inside now for today's procession.
Thank everyone for being here. As you'll learn through this ceremony, to confer an honorary degree by Florida State University is a very unique occasion, and today for us it is a great occasion. On December 1st of 1955, a small, unassuming woman in Montgomery, Alabama, refused to surrender her seat on a bus to a white man. She was arrested, and the subsequent history was like the famous shot at Lexington. That refusal, that arrest, was an event which is heard around the world. Today we're gathered to honor tribute to that lady, to honor her courage, and to celebrate the victories over injustice which we have seen in our time, victories that in many respects began that December 1st day in Montgomery. We have a number of guests to introduce, but a very special guest who is not listed on your program is with us. Delighted to call first on Governor-elect of Florida, the Governor of Florida, the Honorable Lawton Chiles. Governor.
Thank you very much, President D'Alembert. Good morning. It's a special pleasure to be here today to honor Rosa Parks and to welcome her to Florida. This week, as we celebrate Thanksgiving, we should be very thankful for Rosa Parks and for what she has accomplished. She's a woman of great courage who confronted injustice when she refused to give up that seat on the bus in 1955. We know what her act of defiance sparked. That nonviolent revolution was about doing what was right and not what was easy. It's interesting as we all sit here today and as we all cheer, it seems what a wonderful thing. It wasn't easy in 1955, and there wasn't a lot of cheering in 1955. That's the challenge that Rosa Parks faced, and the example that she gives us is that in our lives we will somehow face that challenge as well. Can we stand or sit and do the right thing rather than the easy thing? So we look to Rosa as the example to inspire us as we address each of our challenges that touch all of the people. What a wonderful opportunity for all of us to be here to help celebrate the wonderful life and courage of this great lady. Thank you.
Mrs. Parks symbols the hopes, dreams, and struggles for a quality America. Her courage has inspired countless number of people in our country and around the world. and will continue to be amazed by her acts of courage and conviction. It was the courage on that December day in 1955 that she crossed that invisible but substantive line that separated blacks and whites in our country. She made a major difference not alone in Alabama but throughout the world. Seldom has such moral toughness come in a gentler form. Seldom has physical courage spoken with a quieter voice or assumed a more modest manner. It is difficult to make any comments about this woman that haven't already been made. But your presence today is an honor for us all. At a time in our country when our young people are looking for heroes, what better person to make an example of than you? Like the people of Germany who tore down the Berlin Wall, you tore down the barriers that separated our citizens from each other. People like you who have the courage of their convictions make a difference in this world, and we are touched by you. With your actions in Alabama, you not only helped to free the blacks of this country, but you helped to free all Americans. What a great symbol for the students of today. What greater hero to have on our campus than Miss Rosa Parks. I am proud to stand here next to you and pay homage to a great lady and tireless leader who leads by the only way no one can ignore, by example. You bestow on us a great honor by accepting this degree. Thank you.
We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Deep in my heart, I do believe that we shall overcome someday. We shall live in peace. We shall live in peace. We shall live in peace someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe that we shall live in peace someday. Oh, we shall overcome.
As our musical group started their singing, Mrs. Parks turned to me and said, I usually stand when they sing that song, and I'm glad to see everybody in the audience join with her. It's my great pleasure now to introduce our distinguished speaker, who will be our keynote speaker for this honorary degree ceremony. A. Leon Higginbotham, Jr. is of counsel to a New York law firm, but he is also the public service professor of jurisprudence at Harvard University. He teaches in the Faculty of Arts and Science, the Law School, and the John F. Kennedy School of Government. He is retired as a circuit judge and chief judge emeritus of the United States Court of Appeals for the Third Circuit, based in Philadelphia. He was appointed a district court judge in 1964 and a Court of Appeals judge in 1977. He is a graduate of Antioch College and of Yale Law School, and he has taught as a professor of law the law schools of Harvard, University of Michigan, New York University, University of Pennsylvania, Stanford, and Yale. It's quite appropriate that we ask him to come and be our keynote speaker for an honorary degree ceremony. He is moderately familiar with such ceremonies, having earned 60 honorary degrees himself. He has written extensively and lectured widely. I've had the pleasure, the mixed pleasure, I must say, of sharing a platform with him in various other places, including once Professor Goldstein in Barbados, where it was my great pleasure not to follow him, because he is, in my judgment, one of the great speakers in this country. And indeed, when Dr. Freddie Grooms was talking about someone to speak at this occasion, I suggested to Dr. Grooms that she should simply get the best speaker in the United States. She should get Judge Leon Higginbottom, Judge Higginbottom.
It is a high honor to have the coveted option to be in the presence of Rosa Parks. I understand you play basketball here, and there have been great games. But in the history of this building, when someone through the high court of history will look down, the greatest moments will not be who had the most dunks. The greatest moments will not be the scores, but the greatest moment in the history of this building you're witnessing today. Our nation seems increasingly polarized, and at times we seem almost torn asunder with hysterical rhetoric that more often divides us than brings us together. And thus today is a joyous and almost solemn occasion. We meet here primarily to pay tribute to Rosa Parks, but we meet also to put her courage, her commitment, her wisdom in a historic perspective, so that we can understand the events in the corridors of history that preceded her, impacted on her, and which should shape our future concerns. For those of us who seek to build a more caring and just nation, we take a meaningful first step when we start out by acknowledging that Rosa Parks is a true heroine in our society. We must pause long enough to ponder, what is it that Rosa Parks should symbolize to all Americans? For me, the answer is easy. She exemplifies the very best of America, a compelling commitment for justice for all persons, regardless of race, class, creed, national origin, religion, or sexual orientation. And thus, by the content of her character, her civility, her views are a deterrent to the meanness and non-caring that we see increasingly in American public life. From my perspective, in many ways, Rosa Parks has been as important in the raising of the American consciousness for freedom and fairness as was Patrick Henry. On March 23, 1775, standing in St. John's Episcopal Church in Richmond before the Virginia Convention, he exhorted his colleagues to support his resolution for organizing and arming the Virginia militia. And he ended up with these words which are classic in our civics books. "Forbid it, Almighty God. I know not what course others may take, but for me, give me liberty or give me death." And 219 years later, after Patrick Henry had spoken, we find that on December 1, 1955, on a Montgomery bus, Rosa Parks makes a protest, and her protest could be paraphrased, "Forbid it, Almighty God. I know not what others may take, but as for me, give me the right to sit anywhere on this bus or arrest me." And though Patrick Henry demanded that King George give him liberty because he was concerned about taxation without representation, his plea for liberty could have been considered to be somewhat hypocritical. For at the very time he pled to King George for liberty, he was a co-conspirator in a system that every day deprived black persons of liberty and brought to Patrick Henry enormous profits. And in contrast, Rosa Parks' protests in her life are devoid of any act that one could call hypocritical. And therefore, my friends, for African Americans particularly, the heroine Rosa Parks is as important as Thomas Jefferson, who authored the Declaration of Independence, as significant as George Washington, who led thousands of troops under his command against King George. Yet in some ways, Rosa Parks may be even more of a significant heroine than were those heroes. She worked as a seamstress in a clothing store, and thus, unlike George Washington, she had no troops under her command obligated to follow her into battle. And unlike Thomas Jefferson, she did not own a plantation with 200 slaves whose labors made him a privileged member of the society with sufficient financial influence and power to have time to write great documents of protest. And she was not invited to the equivalent of Independence Hall in Philadelphia, where James Madison had been a dominant voice to frame the Constitution and to propose the Bill of Rights. And all of the doors that had been opened so widely for Patrick Henry, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and James Madison to advocate their revolution and to go on to create a new nation, those very doors would have been slammed twice in Rosa Parks' face. First, because she is a woman, and second, because she is black. And therefore, in 1787, we had only forefathers and no foremothers in this country. And the absence of foremothers is one of profound significance. But today, more than 200 years after the ratification of the Constitution, more than 200 years after the ratification of the Bill of Rights, we anoint and honor Rosa Parks as a person who should legitimately be called a foremother of the United States. So let me close with the words of a great poet, Langston Hughes, who obviously had Rosa Parks in mind when he wrote it. He said, "There's a dream in the land with its back against the wall. By muddled names and strange, sometimes the dream is called. There are those who claim this dream for theirs alone, a sin for which we know they must atone. Unless shared in common like sunlight and like air, the dream will die for lack of substance anywhere. The dream knows no frontier or tongue. The dream no class or race. The dream cannot be kept secure in any one locked place. This dream today embattled with its back against the wall, to save the dream for one, it must be saved for all."
And I now like to ask Dr. Freddie Grooms to introduce the candidate.
Thank you. Life, for me, ain't been no crystal stair. But because our honoree refused to be denied her civil and human rights and chose to confront injustice with dignity and resolve, I and many others like me can live, work, and achieve success unhampered by legally enforced injustice. On December 1st, 1955, She earned the admiration and respect of a nation by refusing to relinquish her seat on a Montgomery, Alabama bus. Because of her courageous act, our lives are richer and our liberty more secure. You have read her biographical sketch, and her story has been told for almost 40 years, so she needs no lengthy introduction. Maya Angelou would perhaps describe her as a phenomenal woman, and I agree. However, the words that I believe best capture the spirit and influence of this unparalleled woman are heroic in her refusal to submit to injustice, vigilant in her efforts to assail all persons to achieve equality, and eloquent in her firm and remarkable refusal to continue to accept the indignity of oppression. Therefore, it is for me a signal honor to introduce the woman who provided the catalyst in what was to become the modern civil rights movement. A woman whose action on that first day of December in 1955 provoked a mood for change in the way this country and her people would view equal rights for all citizens. It gives me a great deal of pride and pleasure to introduce a legendary woman, a phenomenal woman, the mother of the modern-day civil rights movement, Mrs. Rosa Louise Parks.
Mrs. Parks, on the recommendation of the faculty of the Florida State University, by virtue of the authority vested in me by the State Board of Education and the State Board of Regents, I hereby confer upon Rosa Louise Macaulay Parks the honorary degree of Doctor of Humane Letters.
Good morning, everyone. I'm very happy to be here to receive this honorary degree from the great Florida State University, to the President, Dr. Alan Bertie. I'm very happy to be here, and we've heard a wonderful address by Judge Higginbotham, and the singing of Oh, We Shall Overcome. And the whole program has been very, very impressive, and I shall never forget it. I'm very grateful that you are bestowing this honor upon me. And I shall, as I continue my work with young people through the Rosa Raymond Parks Institute and however else I may find myself helping people for a better life, and to inspire and help to encourage, especially young people, to do their very best and reach their highest potential in life. So that is my goal. It has been for a long time, and as long as I am able to be active enough and can think well enough, I shall continue to work for peace, freedom, and equality, and prosperity for every person, regardless of whatever their race may be. Again, I want to thank all of my friends, and I feel like all of you are my friends, this wonderful audience who came out to witness this program, and all the participants. I'm very grateful, and I'm thankful that the Lord has spared me to be here and see this moment at this time in my life. Thank you very, very much.